The Arizona sun, a brazen eye in the vast indifferent sky, beat down on Sterling Hayes. It was 1888, the apex of the gold rush era, and Sterling, a man whose ambition was as boundless as the frontier itself, surveyed the canyonlands like a conqueror, assessing a newly claimed kingdom. He was a magnate, a rail baron whose sheer fortune was built on the back of steel and speculation, a towering figure even when dressed down in dusty, tailored linen. His current obsession was the Premium Series railway extension, a monumental project designed to secure his monopoly over the most profitable mining claims in the territory. "The grade is steep here, Mr. Hayes," Thaddeus Flint, his chief foreman and right-hand man, said, wiping sweat from his brow. Thad was an old hand, a former gunslinger, with a history Sterling never asked about, now serving as the loyal hammer to Sterling's financial anvil. "The grade is irrelevant, Thad. The route is direct, time is gold, and I will not permit a deviation that costs me a single week in connecting the new claims to the eastern market." Sterling's voice was crisp, laced with the unyielding authority of a man accustomed to having earth and men bend to his will. His possessions were numerous: land grants, silver mines, sprawling ranches, but the railroad was his legacy. They rode through a section of the Tonto National Forest, a wild, untamed region that Sterling knew was technically unceded Apache territory. He considered it a minor inconvenience, a final hurdle of stubborn resistance before the inevitable march of progress. He had already dispatched diplomatic teams, men trained to make offers the tribal leaders couldn't refuse or threats they couldn't ignore. Sterling dismounted, his expensive boots crunching on the dry riverbed. He felt a familiar surge of ownership as he looked at the rugged terrain. This land would soon be tamed, the wild pulse of it replaced by the rhythmic clatter of his trains. It was the boots that caught his eye first. Not his, but a pair of finely worked hide moccasins, the leather worn smooth and edged with geometric beadwork of deep ochre and sky blue. They were not merely practical, they were a piece of art, undeniably Apache, and they were pointing straight up. Sterling paused, his cold, calculating mind momentarily stalled by the sheer anomaly of the sight. He urged his horse forward a few steps, his hand resting instinctively on the polished grip of his sidearm. The moccasins were emerging from a small, expertly concealed depression in the earth, a shallow, narrow pit dug deep enough to contain a human body, but vertically, head down. A length of rope, rough-spun and anchored to a hidden root, was tightly wound around one ankle, keeping the individual securely suspended in the dirt. Only the lower calves, the adorned feet, and the telltale moccasins were visible, a gruesome, bizarre trophy. "Thad, look at that." Sterling's voice was low, devoid of emotion, yet carrying a brittle edge of shock. Thad rode up, spat in the dust, and immediately recognized the grim reality. "Damn bounty hunters. They don't want a fight. They just want the reward. That's a slow kill, Mr. Hayes. They bury 'em like that, tied, let the desert heat and the suffocation do the work. They come back later for the scalp or the prisoner." Sterling stared. The boots were still, too still. The feet were bare above the moccasins, the skin the color of rich earth, now pale beneath the grime. There was no movement, no struggle, only the horrific stillness of a body being choked by its own weight and the press of the dry soil. The Apache warrior was suffocating, upside down. His primary directive, his entire life's philosophy, was non-interference. He was a man of business, not of moral crusades. In this savage land, an Indian was an obstacle, a danger, or at best, a commodity. But the sheer cruelty of the execution, the slow, deliberate malice of the trap, ignited something primal within him. This wasn't a death in battle. It was torture. "We're pulling her out," Sterling declared, dismounting fully. Thad's jaw dropped. "Sir, are you out of your mind? If she's dead, it's a waste of time. If she's alive, she's Apache, and she'll slit your throat the minute her hands are free. And if her kin see us touching her, we're dead men." "She's alive, Thad. Look at the dirt on the cuffs of the hide leggings, freshly disturbed. She's fighting, or she was fighting recently. Give me the knife." Sterling ignored the sound logic of his foreman. It was an impulsive decision, driven by a deep, unexpected revulsion for the sight of another human being subjected to such indignity. Thad sighed, handing over a heavy Bowie knife. "If this costs us the railroad, Mr. Hayes, I'm quitting and becoming a preacher." Sterling knelt by the narrow hole. The scent of dry earth, sweat, and something metallic, blood, rose from the cavity. He could hear, faintly, a shallow, ragged gasp, a sound of profound distress. The air must have been nearly exhausted down there. He saw the knot on the rope. expertly tied to prevent slipping. Working quickly, he sliced the anchoring rope, then started digging frantically with his hands, cursing his fancy clothes and his manicured fingernails. The dirt was heavy, compacted. He had to widen the lip of the hole to gain leverage. Thad, seeing his employer, the wealthiest man in the territory, frantically clawing at the dirt like a common gravedigger, reluctantly joined in. Finally, with a grunt, Sterling grasped the ankles and pulled. The body was heavy, a dead weight made heavier by the panic-induced tension of the muscles. He kept pulling until a head emerged from the soil, gasping, coughing violently, covered in dirt and bile. It was a woman. Her long black hair was matted with grime, her face smeared. Her eyes, dark, furious, and utterly feral, locked instantly on Sterling. This was not a victim. This was a warrior. Her leather tunic was bloodied, and she immediately spat a mouthful of dirt at him before collapsing onto the ground, hacking and struggling for breath. Dahzi. She could barely feel her legs. The world swam in a sickening kaleidoscope of pain and disorientation. All she knew was the sudden blinding sunlight and the face of the enemy. Abiya, a white man, well-dressed, powerful, an embodiment of the sickness spreading across the land. He smelled of refined leather and expensive soap, of money and conquest. Sterling stared back. Her eyes held the depth of the desert night and the violence of a trapped mountain lion. He had saved her life, but in her gaze there was no gratitude, only lethal hatred. "For you're safe now," Sterling said, his voice husky from the exertion. He instantly regretted the foolish, naive statement. Dahzi didn't reply. She merely shifted, slowly, painfully, her eyes scanning the ground for any potential weapon. She was in his camp, alive but utterly compromised. Her life was his now, a fact that tasted like ash and defeat in her mouth. She was Dahzi, the one who fought the hardest, the one who never yielded. And now she owed her existence to the very man who sought to destroy her home for his railroad and his fortuna. Thad, ever pragmatic, watched the tense exchange. "She's bad hurt, Mr. Hayes. Got a nasty cut on her arm, and her ankles scraped raw. We can't just leave her. She'll die, and her people will find her and track us back here. We kill her, we start a war." "What are we doing?" Sterling looked at the fierce woman gasping on the ground, then back at the trail of the Premium Series railway that lay waiting for him a mile away. His life had been simple: acquire, conquer, profit. Now he had a wild, beautiful, furious Apache warrior on his hands, a complication of the highest, most dangerous order. "We're taking her with us," Sterling decided, the words shocking even him. "We take her to the old hunting cabin on the Black Mesa. No one ever goes there. We'll treat her wounds, keep her hidden. Once she's strong enough, she can go. If she dies, we bury her where no one will find the body." This entire situation never happened. He knew it was a lie, a dangerous fantasy. He was already hopelessly entangled. Dahzi watched them, her mind still fogged by trauma, but her warrior's instinct sharp. They were taking her. Good. She would go willingly, for now. Every Apache knows that an enemy brought close is an enemy better observed. She would find her chance. She was alive, and the man who rescued her would soon regret his unexpected, uncharacteristic act of mercy. Sterling gently, though impersonally, hoisted her onto his horse, securing her in front of him. Her body was rigid, burning with fever and resentment. As they rode away, leaving the crude trap behind, Sterling felt a change in the atmosphere. The desert had suddenly become personal. The historical romance of the Old West was not about grand financial schemes anymore. It was about the dangerous, captivating weight of the enemy pressed against his chest. The smell of her hair, earthy and wild, was a stark contrast to the sterile calculations of his ledger books. He had rescued her from the dirt only to drag them both into a deep, inescapable drama. He owned many possessions, but he had just acquired the most volatile and potentially costly asset of his entire life. The hunting cabin was one of Sterling's lesser-known possessions, a luxurious hideaway built into the side of the Black Mesa. It was isolated, defensible, and lavishly appointed, a testament to the kind of fortuna that afforded comfort even in the wilderness. They arrived hours later, the sun setting in a riot of violent orange and purple. Dahzi was delirious by the time Sterling dismounted. The inverted suspension had done damage. Her body was bruised, her breathing ragged, and the wound on her forearm, a deep, ragged slice from what looked like a struggle with a knife or a sharp rock, was badly infected. The warrior spirit had been strong enough to sustain her through the initial hours, But now the physical cost was demanding its tribute. Sterling carried her inside, laying her carefully on a plush cot. The contrast between the setting, fine silk blankets, polished wood, crystal lamps, and the patient, a dirt-caked, feverish Apache warrior, was jarring. "I need clean water, soap, and a hot knife, Thad. And bandages. Boil the water," Sterling commanded, stripping off his ruined jacket. His hands, usually only familiar with the feel of a fountain pen or a blueprint, felt clumsy as he began the task of cleaning her wounds. Thad, who had seen his share of frontier brutality, was hesitant but obedient. "She won't let you touch her, Mr. Hayes. Not when she wakes up. Better to tie her down." "No," Sterling said firmly. "I won't treat her like an animal. If she's to trust me, even for an instant, it must be on the strength of my decency, not my chains." Decency. The word felt foreign on his tongue. He had always valued efficiency, profit, and control over decency. But something about Dahzi, perhaps the sheer, unadulterated hatred in her eyes, appealed to the challenge in him. He hadn't saved her life for charity. He had saved her to prove he could, and now he had to see the task through. He worked on her arm, irrigating the wound with scalding, boiled water, ignoring the low, guttural moans that escaped her lips. Her skin was a burnished bronze, taut and strong, covered in tribal markings he didn't understand. He realized that beneath the fierce warrior facade, she was a young woman, perhaps only 22 or 3, with high cheekbones and a mouth that, in repose, hinted at pride and quiet amusement rather than war. When she finally stirred, the room was cast in the soft glow of a kerosene lamp. Her eyes snapped open, instantly lucid, focusing on the pain in her arm and the white man hovering over her. She tried to scramble up, but the dizziness overwhelmed her and the pain in her ankle, where the rope had dug deep, flared. "Easy," Sterling said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "You are safe here. I'm Sterling Hayes. My foreman Thad is outside. I mean you no harm." Dahzi stared at him. She spoke in her native tongue, the words sharp and staccato. Sterling didn't understand, but the meaning was clear. "Where are my people? Why am I here?" "I don't speak your language," Sterling admitted, "but I can understand anger. Listen to me, the men who trapped you are gone. We scared them off. This is my property. You are hidden here. You must rest." For the next 2 days, the relationship was a study in profound, silent hostility. Dahzi refused to eat the salted meat or the bread. She drank only the water Sterling brought and watched him with unblinking suspicion. Sterling, unable to work on his railroad ledgers while this dangerous presence was in his luxurious cabin, was forced into a role he never imagined, nursemaid to his fiercest enemy. He learned quickly. He learned that she flinched at sudden movements, that she spoke in her sleep, short, sharp words that sounded like names or commands. He learned that her spirit was unbroken, even when her body was failing. On the 3rd night, a bad storm swept through. The wind howled like 1,000 lost souls, rattling the thick glass windows of the expensive cabin. Dahzi was restless, her fever returning. She was talking again, louder this time, her voice laced with pain. Sterling approached her, a mug of herb tea in his hand, a remedy he'd learned from one of his ranch hands. As he reached her, she grabbed his wrist with surprising speed and strength, her eyes wide, reflecting a deep terror he hadn't seen before. "They are coming," she hissed, finally speaking English, her accent thick but understandable. "The men, the traps, they know this land." "No one knows this cabin, Dahzi," he soothed, using her name for the first time. "It is one of my private possessions. They will not find you here." "You think your white magic shields you?" she sneered, dropping his hand. "They track life. They follow the injured. They will find me and use me against my people. You are a fool to keep me." Sterling sat on the edge of the cot. "Perhaps I am, but I made a decision. I don't abandon my responsibilities. You are my responsibility now." "I am your enemy." "I'm a man building a railroad. You're a warrior protecting your home. We are opposites, yes, but I saved your life. That must count for something." Dahzi looked at him, really looked at him, seeing past the fine clothes to the deep, unreadable blue of his eyes. He wasn't afraid of her. He was annoyed by her, yes, and frustrated, but not afraid. A wealthy man like him, used to ordering others, was physically attending to her, risking a tribal war. The historical romance of the situation was overshadowed by the profound drama of their proximity. "Your railroad," she whispered, the contempt clear in her voice. "It is death. It brings sickness and takes the land. It steals the power of the earth. It brings progress. prosperity. It connects the world and moves the gold that fuels the future. He was back to his familiar sermon, the logic of the entrepreneur. The argument, the tension, the sheer, forced intimacy of their time together began to chip away at the walls they had both erected. Sterling started to see Dahzi not as the Apache problem, but as a vibrant, intelligent woman with a ferocious loyalty. Dahzi, in turn, began to see Sterling not as the greedy white man, but as a man of strange, contradictory honor who risked his own safety and a multi-million-dollar fortuna to save a woman he had every reason to fear. The seeds of a complex, dangerous attraction were sown in the isolation of that small, luxurious cabin. The frontier was vast, but in that small space, their two worlds collided with the force of a train wreck. Where are you watching from tonight? Please let us know in the comments and remember to subscribe for more amazing stories. The healing was slow, a testament to the severity of her initial ordeal, but Dahzi was resolute. She utilized the forced confinement to study Sterling Hayes. She observed his routines, the meticulous care he took with his ledgers, the way his jaw tightened when he spoke of his rivals, and the deep, possessive pride in his voice when he described the sheer scale of his fortuna and his possessions. He was a king of industry, and she was a queen of the wilderness. They were two rulers, trapped in a truce. "Why did you truly save me?" she asked one afternoon, her tone now less hostile, more analytical. Her English had improved rapidly, drawing on the years she had spent observing the traders and soldiers on the reservation edges. Sterling was cleaning a rifle, his movements precise. "I already told you, I don't tolerate cruelty. It was an appalling way to die." "Appalling?" Dahzi scoffed. "You see my people as appalling obstacles to your steel tracks. Is it not cruel to steal the land that feeds my children? The land that holds the bones of my ancestors?" Sterling paused, lowering the rifle. He looked at her, his usual defense mechanisms failing. "My intent is not cruelty, my intent is commerce. I am building a future, Dahzi. A future where a man can move his resources across a continent in days, not months. The world is changing. It must change. Your way of life is beautiful, I can see that. But it is finite. And yours is endless?" she challenged. "You are a slave to the metal you crave, a slave to the gold in the ground. The railroad is your master, Sterling Hayes." He felt a sharp, unexpected pain at her words. He was rarely challenged, never by anyone who saw past his wealth and reputation. Dahzi saw his soul, and she judged it harshly. The drama was not in the outside world anymore. It was in the confined space between them. Despite the philosophical conflict, a pattern of grudging coexistence had blossomed into genuine fascination. They shared meals, Sterling teaching her about the intricacies of his premium series investment strategies and the politics of Washington, while Dahzi taught him about the desert, the medicinal properties of the sparse plants, and the language of the winds. The attraction was a physical ache, a slow burn fueled by proximity and mutual respect for the other's sheer power. One evening, Thaddeus Flint arrived, breathless and agitated. He had ridden hard, dodging patrols. "Mr. Hayes, they found the new vein. It's bigger than we thought. The mother lode. Enough to guarantee your fortuna for 200 years. It's right under the Black Mesa." Thad's eyes were shining with a mercenary's triumph. Sterling's blood ran cold. "The location, Thad? Be specific." Thad produced a soiled map, pointing to a spot marked with an X. Sterling looked at the mark, then at Dahzi, who was listening intently. Her eyes narrowed. The X was directly on the ridge behind the cabin, a site Dahzi had described only yesterday. The Awa-Ashtish, the place of the ancestral fire, a sacred burial ground for the Apache, guarded fiercely. "The railroad route," Thad continued, oblivious to the impending explosion. "It cuts right across the mining claim. It's perfect. We start digging next month. This is it, Mr. Hayes. This is your legacy. The gold rush has delivered the single greatest possession of your life. The weight of the conflict settled on Sterling's shoulders, like the weight of the mountain itself. The mother lode, the ultimate financial victory, his entire ambition, his life's work, distilled into one rich, irresistible vein of quartz. And it was beneath the sacred ground of the woman he loved. Dahzi stood up, her healing complete, her demeanor shifting back to that of the hardened warrior. "The earth speaks its choice, Sterling. You must choose now, the gold or the life you saved." The confrontation was fierce, silent, and entirely internal for Sterling. He had never believed in sacred ground, only in deeds and claims. He had built his fortuna on exploiting resources. But looking at Dahzi, seeing the pain and ancient sorrow in her eyes, he saw not an enemy, but a mirror reflecting the darkness of his own boundless greed. Thaddeus Flint, sensing the atmosphere, finally understood the gravity of the hidden presence in the cabin. "Sir, with all due respect, what is she to you? She's an Indian. The gold is everything. It's not a choice, it's a formality." Sterling turned to his trusted foreman. "I saved her life, Thad. I am not trading her ancestral peace for a stack of ledger entries. This historical romance demands more than commerce." Thad was stunned. "You would give up the richest claim in Arizona, your entire investment, your premium series railroad route, all of it, for her, for a principal?" "Yes." Sterling's answer was firm, a declaration that shook the foundation of his own identity. "The railroad will run its course, but it will not run over sacred ground. We will reroute it. The gold stays where it is." He had chosen. He had chosen the complexity of a genuine, dangerous love over the simplicity of wealth. It was a choice that would cost him millions, but in that moment of decision, Sterling Hayes felt richer than he ever had. Thad, after a long silence, sighed and nodded. "My loyalty is to you, Mr. Hayes, not to the gold. If you want to build the track around the mountain, we will build it around the mountain, but the men won't understand, and your investors will revolt." Dahzi watched the exchange, her expression slowly softening. The magnate, the embodiment of American conquest, was sacrificing his greatest prize for her. It was the ultimate, unexpected act of drama and devotion. The fight to reroute the premium series railroad was the hardest battle Sterling Hayes had ever faced. It was a financial and political war, a savage contest against his own board of directors, the ruthless speculators of the gold rush, and the very foundation of his capitalistic empire. He had to use every ounce of his fortuna and influence not to gain something, but to lose something. The richest gold vein in the territory. "You're mad, Hayes. This is financial suicide," his investors screamed in telegrams from New York. "I am simply adjusting the path to accommodate local topography," Sterling calmly replied, using his polished rhetoric to disguise the truth. He liquidated a significant portion of his minor possessions to fund the complex, expensive bypass around the sacred mountain. Dahzi, now fully recovered and integrated into the difficult shared life at the secluded cabin, watched his struggle. She saw the cost of his choice, the sleepless nights, the tension in his shoulders. She understood that this fight against his own people was far more dangerous than any skirmish in the desert. "You are giving up too much, Sterling," she told him one morning, her voice filled with a genuine concern that melted the remaining ice in his heart. "I am giving up nothing important," he countered, taking her hand. "I found something better than gold, Dahzi. I found purpose, and I found you." Their romance historico had matured into a profound, shared understanding. Sterling, the pragmatist, had learned the value of the intangible, the sanctity of the land, the power of heritage. Dahzi, the warrior, had learned that not all white men were conquerors, and that love could be a bridge rather than a wall. One day, Dahzi received a message, a single carved feather left on the cabin windowsill. It was a sign from her people. They knew she was alive. They wanted her home. The choice was hers. "I must go, Sterling," she said, her voice heavy. "My duty is to my people. I can't hide here forever." Sterling nodded, his heart sinking, yet understanding. "I know. I will not stop you." He was prepared to let her go, to live with the memory of the most compelling and dangerous love of his life. He had made his sacrifice. He would not ask her to make hers. But as Dahzi prepared to leave, the door burst open. It was Thaddeus Flint, flanked by two rugged, unsmiling riders. "They're here, Mr. Hayes. The men who trapped Dahzi. They followed the rumors of your strange behavior, found the old rope trap and tracked the trail here. They have a warrant from a corrupt judge for transporting a wanted fugitive." The bounty hunters weren't interested in the law. They were interested in the reward and perhaps revenge for the humiliation of losing their captive. A brief, vicious firefight erupted. Sterling, who was a financier first and a gentleman second, was a poor shot, but Thad Flint, the old gunslinger, moved with deadly, cold efficiency. Dahzi, grabbing her traditional bow and quiver, was a blur of motion, her arrows finding their marks with devastating accuracy. Together, the magnate, the gunslinger, and the Apache warrior fought side by side. It was a fierce display of unlikely alliance, a testament to the new bonds forged in the heat of conflict. They drove the bounty hunters back, wounding two and forcing the third to retreat into the scrub. As the dust settled, Sterling stood over Dahzi, shielding her. He was scratched, bruised, and alive. "They will be back," Dahzi said, her voice shaking slightly, not from fear but from the adrenaline. "Then we will be ready," Sterling said, his resolve hardening. He looked at Thad, whose face was grim. "Mr. Hayes," Thad said, wiping blood from his cheek. "I've spent my life watching the greed of men. This is different. You chose right. I'm with you to the end." Dahzi walked towards Sterling, ignoring her lingering duty, and put her hand on his chest, right over his beating heart. "They hunt me because they see me as an enemy to be sold. They hunt you because you dared to choose honor over your fortuna. We are both fugitives in their eyes now, Sterling." "Then we face it together," he said, pulling her into an embrace. The following morning, Sterling sent a final, crucial telegram. He didn't just reroute the railroad. He legally gifted the sacred mountain, the mother lode, and all the surrounding territory to the Apache nation, bypassing the corrupt government officials and using a little-known treaty clause. It was an act of economic and political genius, one that cemented the sacred land and ensured its permanent sovereignty. He had sacrificed his personal fortuna to secure a shared, peaceful future. Dahzi's people, recognizing the profound nature of his sacrifice, accepted the gift. When Dahzi finally returned to her community, she did not go as a lone warrior, but as the partner of the powerful man who had given up the world for her, the one who saw the value of spirit over gold. Sterling Hayes, still immensely wealthy but no longer the most greedy man in the West, built his railroad, but he built it as a pathway of respect and trade, not of conquest. He and Dahzi forged their life together, blending their two worlds in a rare, happy frontier union, proving that love, honor, and sacrifice were the truest treasures to be found in the gold rush era. The true wealth of a person lies not in the value of their possessions, but in the courage to choose what is right over what is easy, and in the enduring strength of the love that redeems and transforms. If this story touched your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Your support is our greatest reward.